Welcome back, children. Chapter number 3 of History, Ruling the Countryside. In this chapter, we will read how East India Company, after becoming Diwani of Bengal, earned its revenue by formulating some new methods of revenue collection. So let's begin. The company becomes the Diwan on 12th August 1765. The Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II granted the Diwani rights of Bengal to East India Company. This was granted by Shah Alam II and Robert Clive. Now the company became the chief financial administrator of Bengal. When the company achieved the right of Diwani, the responsibility of administering the land and organizing its revenue also came on the shoulders of the company. Not only this, it had to ensure that it could buy the products it needed at cheaper rates and sell them at very high rates. Over the years, the company had also learned how to play safe in an unknown land, that is India. Now here what I mean is that company had to pacify those who were the early rulers of the countryside. It was not possible to eliminate them completely, so the company did the following. They organized its revenue resources to yield crops they needed, colonizing the countryside. That's what we are going to study further in this chapter. Revenue for the company. Though the company became Diwan of Bengal province, still it was working as a trading company. It was not interested in selling up any regular system of assessment and collection of revenue. Their main aim was to increase revenue so that they have plenty of money to buy cotton and silk. But the prices of the goods had increased so far. Now, as we have studied in previous chapters, that earlier the company was dependent upon the inflow of gold and silver from Britain for purchasing goods in India. But after 1765, things changed, and now the revenue from Bengal was enough to purchase goods. But here also a big problem arose. What was this problem? The economy of Bengal faced a deep crisis because of the following. First, artisans left Bengal as they were being forced by the company to sell their products at cheaper rate. Second, peasants were unable to pay the heavy dues laid on them. Third, agriculture was collapsing. Meanwhile, big famine of 1770 hit Bengal. This killed about 10 million population. There washing about one third of the population of Bengal. As such incidents took place, which ruined the economy heavily. The company then felt the need of improving the agriculture. The need to improve agriculture. Most of the company officials were of the view that there was a great need of investing in land and agriculture in order to improve it, because the fall in agriculture was resulting into great loss of revenue to the company. Therefore, after long thinking, in 1793, the company took the decision of introducing the revenue collection method known as permanent settlement. As per the settlement, the Rajas, Talukdars were now known as the Jamindars, and they had to collect the rent from peasants, which was fixed permanently by the Britishers. The main aim behind this was that Jamindars will only pay the fixed amount to Britishers, since the demand of revenue will not increase and will invest into the improvement of agriculture to generate extra income for themselves. It did not go as per the plan, and the following problems arose. The problems. The permanent settlement, however, did not prove to be the useful as thought by the company. Soon it was discovered that Jamindars were not investing in the improvement of land because the land fix was so high that it became impossible for the Jamindars to pay it off. As a result, they were deprived of Jamindaris. Even the Jamindaris were also put on auction by the company. Meanwhile, something new was noticed by the company, that the situation was changing as the prices of the goods were increasing, and slowly but gradually the agriculture was also expanding. This led to benefit of Jamindars, but for the company it remained same as the revenue was fixed. Even the Jamindars were not keen to invest in improvement of agriculture because they were gaining a lot without putting any efforts into the form of the rent that they obtained from the peasants. On the other hand, the cultivators found extremely oppressive as they had to pay high rent to Jamindars, though they did not have ownership over the land that they worked on. Now that we know the problems being faced by the company regarding generation of revenue, we should now move on the solution it came up with. A new system is devised. By early 19th century, many of the company officials felt that it was impossible for the company to survive on the fixed amount of rent that it was getting, because now the expenses of the company had increased. They decided to develop a new method of revenue collection, Mahalwari system. In 1822, an Englishman called Holt Mackenzie felt that village was an important social institution for Worth Indian society and needed to be preserved. Therefore, he developed a new method of revenue collection known as Mahalwari system. In this system, following steps were taken. Officers went to different villages for inspection of land. Fields were measured. Customs and rights of the people were recorded. Estimated revenue of each plot within the village was added up to the calculate the revenue that each village, that is Mahal, had to pay. The revenue was not permanently fixed, it was to be revised periodically. Instead of Jamindars, the village headman was not responsible of collecting and paying the revenue to the company. While Mahalwari system of revenue collection was introduced in the northern part of the country, another method came into use in the southern part of India. This was famously known as Ryotwari system or Munro system. So let's know about Ryotwari system or a Munro system. In southern part of India, also Britishers felt that permanent settlement method was not beneficial enough, and so Thomas Munro, Governor of Madras from period 1819 to 26, developed a new method of revenue collection known as Ryotwari system. This system was actually based on a method which was applied by Captain Alexander Reed on a small scale in some of the areas which were won over by the company after defeating Tipu Sultan. Riots here refers to the cultivators. As there was absence of jamindars in South India, both Reed and Munro decided to directly deal with the riots or the cultivators who were tilling the land from generations. Under this, the fields of riots were carefully measured and assessed. So now we know that three systems of revenue collection were tried by the British. Let's compare permanent settlement, Malwari system and Ryotwari system. Permanent settlement was introduced in 1793. Revenue was fixed. Jamindars were ordered to collect the revenue. Introduced in Bengal, Bihar and Orissa, Jamindars were the owners of the land. Malwari system introduced in 1833. Revenue was not fixed. Estimated revenue, each plot was added to the total revenue of the village. Instead of jamindars, the revenue was collected by the village headmen. Introduced in northwestern frontier Punjab, Gangetic Valley, peasants were the owner of the land. Ryotwari system introduced in 1820. Revenue was not fixed. Each field was carefully measured and assessed. Britishers collected to revenue. Introduced in Madras, Bombay, Kurk, etc. Peasants were the owners. Okay, now we know the difference between all the three systems of revenue collection. We know that Ryotwari system was also introduced by the Britishers, but soon a new problem arose. What was that? Let's find out. All was not well. Under the Ryotwari system, peasants were charged with a very high rate of tax. They started deserting the countryside as it became impossible for them to pay tax. Many of the company officers were of the view that the new system of collection will help peasants in becoming rich, but this never happened. Britishers were not solely dependent on the revenue generated from Indian territories in the form of taxes. They levied, but they also decided to use the crops of the country in order to earn profit in the trading business. This we will study further. Crops for Europe. By the late 18th century, Britishers tried to expand the cultivation of opium and indigo in various parts of India. They also forced the cultivators to grow various other crops such as jute in Bengal, tea in Assam, sugarcane in Uttar Pradesh, wheat in Punjab, cotton in Maharashtra, and rice in Madras. So basically, the more emphasis was laid on the cultivation of indigo. So now, why the demand for indigo plantation? First of all, you should know what indigo is and why it is used. Basically, indigo is a plant from which a blue powder is derived or obtained, and this is used to dye clothes in blue, or as we say, indigo color. Indigo was so important because it can only be grown in tropical climate. So climate of India was suitable for its growth. India was the main exporter of indigo. It was of high demand in Europe because it gave a rich blue color to be used for dyeing the clothes. In Europe, a plant named woad was cultivated, which was used for dyeing clothes, but the color that it gave was not so rich, resulting into the high demand of indigo in Europe. One interesting fact that woad and indigo is that the woad cultivators were so worried about the tough competition they were facing because of indigo that they pressurized their respective governments to ban the import of indigo. Not only English but the French and Caribbean islands The Portuguese in Brazil, the Spanish in Venezuela also started cultivating indigo plants. While the demand for indigo was increasing, its supply fell to half between 1783-89 due to various reasons. As there was less supply, the British dyers became keener to produce indigo, and at this point they turned to India to meet their needs. Britain turns to India. The demand for indigo was rising day by day in Europe. Therefore, the company decided to expand indigo cultivation in India. Bengal was the largest exporter of indigo to the Britain. In 1810, about 95% of the indigo imported by Britain was from Bengal. As the indigo trade grew, many of the commercial agents and company officials started investing in the indigo business. As this was a profitable business, many Englishmen settled in India and became indigo planters. Even loans were granted by the company and the banks for indigo cultivation. How indigo was cultivated? Indigo was cultivated under two systems. They are as follow. First, niche. In this system, the planter produced indigo on the land which was under his control. Either he was the owner or he had rented it for indigo cultivation. But the niche cultivators found it difficult to grow indigo as it required a large fertile area which was not easily available as most of the land was densely populated. Even laborers were not available sometimes as they were busy with the rice cultivation. Thus, they were not interested in growing indigo anymore. Second, Ryothi. Under the Ryothi system, the planters entered into contract with ryots or village headmen, sometimes forcibly. According to the contract, 25% of land was exclusively kept for the cultivators of indigo, and loans were provided for its cultivation. The planter used to provide the seeds and drill to the farmer, and he in return had to take care of the plants. But soon the ryots realized that this system was not as easy one because they got trapped in the cycle of loans which were unending, and the income they received through indigo plantation was also very meager, that is less. Even the fertility of land deteriorated, that means became worse. The land became unfit for the growth of rice after the cultivation of indigo. As the system of indigo plantation was very oppressive, all the peasants became rebellious. The Blue Rebellion and after. In March 1859, a rebellion broke in Bengal. Many of the ryots refused to pay rents to the planters. Not only this, they attacked indigo factories. At some places, the village headmen who were forced to enter into a contract by the planters also supported the rebellion. Peasants at some places thought that they would get support from the Britishers, but it was not so as the Britishers became cautious. After the revolt of 1857, so they brought military for safeguarding planters in the indigo districts. Queen Victoria ordered Magistrate of Barasat, Ashley Eden, to issue a notice stating that ryots would not be forced to enter into indigo contract. An indigo commission was set up to look into the matter. The commission came up with the following conclusion. First, planters were found guilty. Second, planters were forcing ryots to enter into contract. Third, indigo cultivation was not profitable for ryots. Fourth, the ryots were asked to fulfill the existing contracts, but they got the right to refuse for indigo cultivation in future. After the revolt, as production of indigo came to an end in Bengal, planters shifted to Bihar. There also they faced similar revolt known as Champaran revolt in year 1917, which was supported by Mahatma Gandhi. Thank you.